All right, hey everybody, it's Evan from devisn.com, and in this video, we're going to go over a cool feature in HeadlessUI, which is a transition component. So HeadlessUI is a completely unstyled, fully accessible UI component library, meaning that out of the box, these components are completely unstyled, but all the functionality that you would expect them to have just work. And this is a really useful component library to integrate if you're using tailwindcss, which is what I'm going to be using in this video. Now in future videos, I'm going to actually cover more components in this library, but for right now, I'm just going to cover the transition component and show you a brief example of how that works. All right, so for this video, I'm actually going to use React. So I'm going to go to the React documentation. All right, so the first thing you need to do is you're going to have to install HeadlessUI/React. So you can use yarn or npm, whatever you prefer. Now I actually have this already installed, so I'm actually going to import it into my Next.js app here. And we're going to actually want to install the transition from HeadlessUI. Now before we do that, I'm actually going to import the useState hook. So right here, I've just created a isShown variable. And we're going to use this variable for the show prop on our transition component. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second. But first, we're going to go ahead and add in a couple things here. So I'm going to make these divs. And then we're going to add a button. And this button is basically going to toggle whether or not the text within our transition component is going to be shown or hidden. All right, so now we have our button, which when we click on it is going to toggle our isShown variable up here. Now, just for the sake of making things display clearly, I'm going to add some tailwindcss styling. Again, it's not necessary that you have this. I'm just having this to make everything more clear. And then I'm actually going to add in tailwindcss classes for our wrapper divs as well, again, for the sake of clarity. And now we can finally add in our transition component. So I'm going to put that right under the button here. So there's actually a lot of props we can add for our transition component. One of the main key things is the show prop, and this is where we're going to pass in our isShown variable. And this is how we toggle whether the children of our transition component are going to be shown. I'm going to go ahead and add some text here. This is not necessary, but I'm going to add a class name prop to this just to help better display what's going on. All right, now I'm going to start up my Next.js app, and we're going to see what it looks like in our web browser. So here you can see we have our click to reveal button. Now, if I go ahead and click on this, this is going to toggle the isShown variable, and it should show our text within our transition component. And here you can see. Now it says with text. However, you'll notice that it just appears and disappears. There's no transitional animation going on here. So let's go ahead and add that to our transition component. All right, so right below our show property, I'm just going to add in our transitions here. And you're going to see that we have 6 different props here. So let's go over each of these props and see what they do. Our first prop here is enter. So our enter prop is applied the entire time an element is entering. So you usually will define your duration and what properties you want here. The enter from prop is the starting point to enter from. We're going to start from our opacity 0 and start from a scale 95. And our enter to is the ending point to enter to, where now we have our opacity set to 100 and our scale to be the full scale of 100. And then just like our entering, we also have the same for leave. So this is applied the entire time the component is leaving, or in our case being hidden. And this is the starting point to leave from, where our opacity was at 100 and the scale is 100. And the last property is leave to, which is what the end of our transition is going to be, where we're setting the opacity back down to 0 and our scale back down to 95. So you can see how this works really well with tailwindcss, since tailwindcss is all about classes here. And now if we actually go back to our browser, we're going to see that it kind of fades in and fades out. It's more smooth every time we click to reveal it and every time we click to hide it. It's very smooth and it just looks great. And now you don't have to just use text. You can have whatever you want as a child here. So I'm going to just put in an example div I created here, and I'm going to get rid of our class name on our transition here since we don't need it anymore. And now if we go back to our browser, it fades nicely in and out. So that's pretty much the basics here. There's other things like the appear prop, which is a Boolean that basically says whether or not the transition should run on the initial mount. As well as you can have transition.child components within your transition if you want those to have their own transitions. But this is pretty much the basics here. I'll have a link to this GitHub repo as well as the HeadlessUI documentation in the description down below. But that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great day.